I've been a 911 dispatcher for the Seattle Police Department for 7 years. In that time, I've taken thousands of calls. I've talked people through CPR while they performed compressions on their dying loved ones. I've stayed on the line with victims during active home invasions. I've heard the last words of people who didn't make it. This job hardens you in ways that are difficult to explain to people who've never done it. You develop a kind of emotional armor, a professional distance that allows you to function during the worst moments of other people's lives. But 3 weeks ago, I received a call that shattered that armor completely. The call came in at 2:47 a.m. on October 29. I was 6 hours into my overnight shift, running on my third cup of coffee and the adrenaline that comes with working the graveyard slot. Overnight is when you get the weird calls, the drunk and disorderly, the mental health crises, the domestic disturbances that have been brewing all evening and finally explode after midnight. I pressed the button to accept the next call in queue. 911, what's your emergency? There was heavy breathing on the other end. Panicked breathing. Then a voice, female, speaking rapidly, please, you have to listen to me. I don't have much time. On November 19, at approximately 11:34 p.m., there's going to be an accident on the Aurora Bridge. A silver Toyota Camry is going to lose control and hit the barrier. The driver is going to survive, but there's a pedestrian, a man in a red jacket, he's going to be hit by debris. He's going to die unless you can get someone there first. I went into professional mode immediately. Ma'am, slow down. Are you reporting an accident that's happening right now? No, you're not listening. The voice was frantic, desperate. It hasn't happened yet. It's going to happen on November 19. You need to write this down. Aurora Bridge. 11:34 p.m. Silver Toyota Camry. Man in red jacket. You have to prevent it. Ma'am, I need you to calm down. Are you in danger right now? Do you need immediate assistance? I'm not. There was a sound like she was crying. Please, just write it down. November 19, 11:34 p.m. Aurora Bridge. You have to save him. You have to. The line went dead. I sat there for a moment, staring at my screen. The call had lasted 43 seconds. I'd logged it automatically, as I do with all calls, but I flagged it as unusual. Possible mental health crisis, I noted. Caller reporting future accident delusional. But here's the thing that made my hands shake as I typed. The voice on that call was familiar in a way that made my skin crawl. It sounded like me. Not exactly like me, it was stressed, panicked, higher pitched than my normal speaking voice. But the cadence, the inflection, certain pronunciations, it was too similar to be coincidence. I told myself I was being ridiculous. Lots of people sound alike, especially on phone calls with poor audio quality. I was tired, it was the middle of the night, my brain was playing tricks on me. I mentioned it to my supervisor during break, trying to keep my voice casual. Weird call tonight. Woman claiming to report an accident that hasn't happened yet. My supervisor, a veteran named Rita who'd been dispatching for 20 years, barely looked up from her phone. Yeah, we get those sometimes. Usually drugs or mental illness. Did you route it appropriately? Logged it as non-emergency. Possible wellness check needed if we can trace the number. Good. Don't think too hard about the weird ones, Chen. You'll drive yourself crazy. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. I pulled the audio recording and listened to it 3 more times during my shift. Each time, I became more convinced that voice was mine. Or at least, it sounded unnervingly like mine. When I got home at 8 a.m., I didn't go straight to bed like I usually do after a night shift. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table and wrote down everything the caller had said, trying to capture it word for word. November 19, 11:34 p.m. Aurora Bridge. Silver Toyota Camry. Man in red jacket. The date was 3 weeks away. The details were specific. Too specific to be a random delusion. I told myself I was being insane. That I was letting one weird call get under my skin. That there was a reasonable explanation, maybe someone who sounded like me, maybe a prank caller who'd somehow gotten a voice sample and was screwing with me. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was genuinely wrong. That somehow, impossibly, I had called myself from the future to warn about something terrible. Over the next 3 weeks, I became increasingly obsessed with that call. I listened to the recording dozens of times. I researched similar cases. Had other 911 dispatchers ever received calls that seemed to come from themselves? I found nothing concrete, just urban legends and creepypasta stories that were obviously fiction. I tried to investigate the phone number the call came from, but it showed up as unknown in our system, which sometimes happens with VoIP calls or certain mobile carriers. Our tech team couldn't trace it. I told exactly 2 people about my suspicions, my roommate Sarah and my therapist. Sarah, who's known me since college, listened to the recording and said, "I mean, it does sound kind of like you. But you know how you always sound different on recordings than you think you sound? It's probably just someone with a similar voice. You're psyching yourself out." My therapist, Dr. Morrison, was more careful in her response. "Let's explore why this is affecting you so strongly. Is there something about the content of the call that's resonating with you? A fear of not being able to save people?" She had a point. The core trauma of being a 911 dispatcher is that you're always one step removed from the emergency. You're trying to help, but you can't physically be there. You're dependent on the information callers give you, and sometimes that information is wrong or incomplete. Sometimes people die while you're on the phone with them, and you're helpless to do anything but listen. The idea that I was calling myself to warn about a preventable death that hit every anxiety trigger I had about this job. But despite the therapy and the rational explanations, I couldn't let it go. As November 19 approached, I made a decision that was probably unethical and definitely against protocol. I was going to be at the Aurora Bridge that night. I requested the night off, not difficult, since I had plenty of vacation time accumulated. Then I planned to position myself near the bridge around 11 p.m. and watch. If nothing happened, fine. I'd know I'd been obsessing over nothing, and I could move on. But if something did happen, I didn't let myself finish that thought. November 19 arrived. It was a Tuesday, cold and clear. The kind of night where the air feels sharp in your lungs. I left my apartment at 10:15 p.m., drove to the Aurora Bridge, and parked in a lot that gave me a clear view of the northbound lanes. The Aurora Bridge is one of Seattle's major thoroughfares, a high-level bridge that spans the Lake Washington Ship Canal. It's also, unfortunately, a common location for suicides high enough that a jump is usually fatal. But the call hadn't mentioned a suicide. It had mentioned an accident. I sat in my car with my windows cracked, drinking coffee from a thermos, watching traffic pass. Cars, buses, the occasional motorcycle. Everything looked normal. I checked my watch obsessively. 10:47 p.m. 11:02 p.m. 11:19 p.m. At 11:28 p.m., I started to feel ridiculous. What was I doing? Sitting in a parking lot in the middle of the night because of one weird phone call? This was crazy. I was experiencing some kind of breakdown, letting the stress of my job manifest in paranoid delusions. I was about to start my car and leave when I saw him. A man walking along the pedestrian path on the bridge. He was wearing a red jacket. My heart stopped. I grabbed my phone, hands shaking. It was 11:31 p.m. The man walked slowly, his hands in his pockets, seemingly unbothered by the cold. He stopped about halfway across the bridge and leaned against the railing, looking out at the water below. Traffic continued flowing past him. I watched, barely breathing. 11:33 p.m. Then I saw the car. A silver sedan. I couldn't tell the make from this distance, but it was definitely silver. It was in the right lane, moving at normal speed. 11:34 p.m. The silver car suddenly swerved. I don't know why. Maybe the driver fell asleep, maybe they were texting, maybe there was a mechanical failure. But the car veered sharply to the right, toward the barrier where the pedestrian path was separated from the roadway. The man in the red jacket turned at the sound of squealing tires. He barely had time to react. The car hit the barrier with tremendous force. The barrier held. Those things are designed to contain vehicles, but the impact sent a chunk of concrete flying. The debris arced through the air, tumbling end over end, directly toward the man. I didn't think. I just acted. I was out of my car and running toward the bridge before I consciously decided to move. I was screaming, though I don't remember what I said. Something incoherent, just noise meant to get his attention. The man looked toward me, distracted for a crucial half-second. He started to step backward, away from the railing. The concrete chunk hit the railing where he'd been standing just moments before, obliterating a section of it and sending smaller pieces scattering. If he'd still been standing there, it would have hit him directly. He would have died, just like the voice on the phone had said. But he'd moved. Because I'd screamed. Because I'd been there. The silver car screeched to a stop about 30 yards past the impact point. Other cars were pulling over. People were getting out, checking on the driver, calling 911. I approached the man in the red jacket slowly. He was staring at the destroyed section of railing, his face pale. "Are you okay?" I asked. He nodded shakily. I think that would have killed me if I'd been standing there." "Yeah," I said. "I think so too." We stood there together as the sound of sirens approached. Fire trucks, ambulances, police. My colleagues responding to the call that multiple witnesses had already made. The man turned to me. "Thank you. If you hadn't yelled, I wouldn't have moved. You saved my life." I didn't know what to say. I'd saved his life, yes. But only because some version of me from some impossible future had warned me this was going to happen. The police took statements from everyone present. The driver of the silver Toyota Camry, it was a Camry, just like the voice had said, was uninjured but in shock. She kept saying she didn't know what happened, that the car just suddenly pulled to the right. They checked her blood alcohol and drug levels, both negative. Probable mechanical failure, they concluded. The man in the red jacket gave his statement and thanked me again before leaving. His name was David Chen, no relation to me, despite the shared surname. He was a teacher at a local high school, 42 years old, married with 2 kids. He'd been walking home from a friend's house because his car was in the shop. A completely ordinary person who would have died at 11:34 p.m. if I hadn't been there. I drove home in a daze. What had just happened? How had I known? How had the call predicted this with such accuracy? I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed replaying everything, trying to make sense of it. The only explanation that fit the facts was impossible. I had somehow called myself from the future. But how? Why? And what did it mean? At 2:30 a.m., unable to sleep, I got up and checked my work email on my phone. There was a message from Rita, my supervisor, sent at 2:15 a.m. Subject: Aurora Bridge incident. Chen, saw you were one of the witnesses at the Aurora Bridge accident tonight. Hope you're okay. That was incredibly lucky timing that you were there. Let me know if you need any support services. Also, we got another weird call tonight that's flagged for your attention. Caller specifically asked for you by name. Call is logged in the system. Might be related? Let's talk when you're back on shift. Another call? Asking for me by name? I logged into the system remotely, which I'm technically not supposed to do from home, but I had to know. The call had come in at 2:47 a.m. exactly the same time as the first call, 3 weeks earlier. I pulled up the audio recording with trembling hands. 911, what's your emergency? The dispatcher on duty was James, one of the night shift regulars. I need to speak to Sarah Chen. The voice was familiar. My voice. Ma'am, this is emergency services. If you have an emergency, I can help you. If you need to speak to a specific dispatcher, please, I don't have much time. Tell Sarah Chen it worked. Tell her the call worked. She saved him. And tell her. A pause, heavy breathing. Tell her she needs to figure out how this is happening. Because it's going to happen again. Another call. Another date. December 8th. She'll know when she receives it. And Sarah, the voice cracked, emotion bleeding through. Don't try to stop it. Don't try to prevent the calls. They're important. People are going to die if we don't. The line went dead again. 43 seconds, just like before. I sat there in my dark bedroom, staring at my phone screen, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it. It worked. I'd saved David Chen. The future version of me, if that's what this was, had successfully warned the past version of me, and I'd acted on that warning, and a man was alive who should have been dead. But now there was going to be another call. December 8th. Another date. Another person to save. This was real. This was actually happening. I spent the rest of the night researching temporal paradoxes, theories about time travel, quantum mechanics, anything that might explain what was happening to me. I found a lot of theoretical physics that was way over my head and a lot of science fiction that didn't help. The closest thing I found to an explanation was the concept of closed time-like curves, theoretical paths through space-time that loop back on themselves, potentially allowing information to travel backward in time. Some physicists think they might be possible under certain extreme conditions. But even if that explained the mechanism, it didn't explain why this was happening to me specifically. Why was I able to call myself? Was it something about my job, about being a 911 dispatcher? Was it something about me personally? Was this happening to other people too, and they just weren't talking about it? I had so many questions and zero answers. When I went back to work 2 days later, Rita called me into her office. "Tell me what's going on," she said, not unkindly. "The weird call 3 weeks ago. You being at the bridge at the exact time of the accident. Now this second call specifically asking for you. What's happening, Chen?" I'd prepared for this conversation, but I still didn't know how to explain without sounding insane. I decided to go with a version of the truth that left out the most unbelievable parts. "I think someone is giving me advance warning about emergencies," I said. "I don't know who or how. But the first call gave me specific information about the bridge accident, and I decided to check it out, and it happened exactly as described. Now there's been a second call, and I think there's going to be another incident that I need to be aware of." Rita studied me for a long moment. "You understand how this sounds, right? Like you've gotten caught up in some kind of prank or scam." "I know. But a man is alive because of that first call. That's real. That happened. Do you think you're in danger? Is someone stalking you? Trying to involve you in something illegal?" "I don't think so. I think someone is trying to help. Trying to prevent tragedies. And they're using me to do it." Rita sighed. "Okay. Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to allow you to continue working, but I want you to see the department psychologist. Not because I think you're crazy, but because this is a highly unusual situation and I need to make sure you're handling it okay. If you receive any more calls like this, you report them to me immediately. And if you feel unsafe or compromised in any way, you tell me. Understood?" "Understood. Thank you. And Chen? Be careful. I don't know what's going on, but my gut says there's something weird happening here. Trust your instincts, but don't do anything that puts you in danger." I agreed, though I wasn't sure what danger meant in this context. If I was calling myself from the future, was I in danger from myself? That seemed absurd. Over the next 2 weeks, I waited for the December 8th call. I couldn't stop thinking about it. What was going to happen on December 8th? Who was I going to save? And more importantly, how was this happening? I started keeping a journal, documenting everything. The dates, times, exact wording of the calls. My actions and their outcomes. I figured if this was going to keep happening, I needed to track it systematically. I also started researching David Chen, the man I'd saved. I found his social media profiles, learned about his life. He taught history at a local high school. He posted pictures of his family, his wife Lisa, his daughters Emily and Sophie, ages 12 and 9. After the bridge incident, he'd posted, "Grateful to be alive today. Had a close call last night that reminded me how precious every moment is. Hug your loved ones." He had no idea how close that call really was. No idea that without intervention, he'd be dead. His wife would be a widow. His daughters would be growing up without a father. The weight of that knowledge was almost unbearable. I'd saved him, but it felt less like heroism and more like I'd been handed an impossible responsibility. How many other people were dying in accidents that could have been prevented if someone had just known about them in advance? December 8th finally arrived. I was working the night shift again. I'd specifically requested it, knowing the calls seemed to come at 2:47 a.m. I spent the entire shift tense, waiting, watching the clock. 2:47 a.m. came and went. Nothing. I started to worry. Had I misunderstood? Was the date wrong? Then, at 3:03 a.m., an emergency call came in. It was routed to me specifically, which wasn't normal. Calls are usually distributed automatically. I accepted it. 911, what's your emergency? Sarah, it's me again. My voice, unmistakable now. I'm sorry I'm late. It's getting harder to make the connection. The window is narrower each time. What's happening? I asked, abandoning any pretense of protocol. There was no one near enough to hear me. How are you doing this? I don't have time to explain. You're going to figure it out eventually. You've already started to. But right now, I need you to listen. December 14th, 4:17 a.m. A house fire at 2847 Madison Street. A family of 4. The father is going to fall asleep with a cigarette. The smoke detectors have dead batteries. They're all going to die unless first responders can get there faster. Wait, how am I supposed to? You'll figure it out. You always do. December 14, 4:17 a.m. 2847 Madison Street. Save them, Sarah. And keep investigating. The answer is closer than you think. It's about the bridge. What do you mean, about the bridge? But the line was already dead. 47 seconds, this time slightly longer than the previous calls. I sat there, processing. December 14th was 6 days away. A house fire. A family of 4. Dead batteries in the smoke detectors. This one was different from the Aurora Bridge incident. That one I could prevent by being physically present. But how was I supposed to prevent a house fire? I couldn't just show up at someone's house and tell them to check their smoke detectors. They'd think I was insane. Unless I pulled up the address in our system. 2847 Madison Street. A single-family home in the Central District, owned by Marcus and Jennifer Williams. I cross-referenced with other databases I had access to. Marcus Williams, age 37. Jennifer Williams, age 35. 2 children, Tyler and Naomi, ages 6 and 4. A completely normal family who was going to die in 6 days if I didn't do something. I spent the rest of my shift thinking through options. The most obvious solution was to call in an anonymous tip, report a fire hazard, get the fire department to do a welfare check. But that might not work. They might not take it seriously enough. They might not check the smoke detectors. The family might change the batteries today and then forget about them again by December 14th. I needed something more certain. After my shift ended, I did something that was definitely illegal. I used my access to police databases to find Marcus Williams' phone number and workplace. I crafted a careful plan. The next day, I called the Williams household from a burner phone I'd bought at a convenience store. Jennifer Williams answered. Hello. Hi, Mrs. Williams, this is calling from the Seattle Fire Department's Community Safety Program. We're doing random safety checks in your neighborhood as part of a fire prevention initiative. Would you be willing to answer a few questions about your home's fire safety preparedness? It was a complete lie, of course. There was no such program. But I made my voice sound official and friendly. Jennifer was receptive. Sure, I guess so. Great. First question, when was the last time you checked your smoke detector batteries? There was a pause. Oh, gosh. I don't actually remember. It's been a while. No problem. That's very common. We recommend checking them every 6 months. Would you be willing to check them now while I'm on the phone? We're trying to get real-time data for our program. Okay. Hold on. I heard her moving through the house, testing each smoke detector. My heart was pounding. Okay, I'm checking the one in the hallway upstairs. The test button isn't making any sound. That likely means the battery is dead. How many smoke detectors do you have total? 3. 1 upstairs, 1 downstairs, 1 in the kitchen. She checked the other 2. Both had dead batteries. Mrs. Williams, I'm going to recommend that you replace all 3 of those batteries today if possible. Dead smoke detectors are one of the leading causes of preventable fire deaths. Oh my God, I had no idea. Thank you so much for calling. I'm going to send my husband to the store right now. That's great. And Mrs. Williams? One more thing. Please be extra careful about cigarettes or anything that could cause a fire. Make sure they're fully extinguished before bed. We don't smoke, but I'll definitely be more careful. Wait. They didn't smoke? But the future call had said the father fell asleep with a cigarette. I'm sorry, I think I might have the wrong household info. Does anyone in your home smoke? No, we don't allow smoking in the house. Although. She paused. My brother-in-law Marcus sometimes smokes when he visits. He's been staying with us this week while his apartment is being fumigated. He's not supposed to smoke inside, but once I caught him smoking out the window in the guest room. There it was. The brother-in-law, also named Marcus, staying at the house temporarily. That's very helpful information. If you could please remind your brother-in-law about the no smoking policy and the importance of fire safety, that would be great. Absolutely. Thank you so much for this call. After we hung up, I felt a small sense of relief. I'd warned them about the smoke detectors. They were going to replace the batteries. That should be enough, right? But doubt gnawed at me. What if it wasn't enough? What if Marcus still smoked inside? What if something else went wrong? I couldn't take any chances. For the next 6 days, I monitored the Williams household. Not physically, I couldn't stalk them, but I checked in with the dispatcher assigned to their district, casually asking if there'd been any calls to that address. I even drove by the house once during the day, just to see it, to make it feel real. December 14th arrived. I wasn't scheduled to work that night, but I stayed awake, sitting in my apartment, watching the clock. 4 a.m. Nothing. 4:15 a.m. I had my phone in my hand, ready to call 911 if needed. 4:17 a.m. I held my breath. 4:30 a.m. Nothing. By 5 a.m., I allowed myself to believe it had worked. The warning I'd given Jennifer Williams had been enough. She'd changed the batteries, reminded her brother-in-law about smoking. The fire had been prevented. I'd saved 4 people who never even knew they were in danger. That should have been the end of it. I should have felt relief, satisfaction, closure. Instead, I felt a growing sense of dread. Because the last call had told me something else, keep investigating. The answer is closer than you think. It's about the bridge. What did that mean? What about the Aurora Bridge was I supposed to investigate? I spent my days off researching. I learned that the Aurora Bridge had been built in 1932 and had a dark history. Over the years, hundreds of people had jumped from it. It was one of the most common suicide locations in the United States. There had been numerous proposals to add suicide barriers, but they'd been repeatedly rejected due to cost and engineering challenges. Was that what the future me wanted me to know? That the bridge itself was significant? I dug deeper. I found records of accidents on the bridge over the decades. Collisions, mechanical failures, weather-related incidents. Nothing seemed particularly unusual or relevant. Then I found something strange. In the past 10 years, there had been 7 incidents on the Aurora Bridge where people reported experiencing lost time or temporal disorientation. Drivers who couldn't account for several minutes of their journey. Pedestrians who started crossing the bridge and found themselves on the other side with no memory of walking. Small things, easily dismissed as distraction or fatigue. But what if they weren't? What if the bridge had some kind of temporal anomaly? What if that's why I was able to receive calls from the future? It sounded insane. But everything about this situation was insane. I started researching temporal anomalies, looking for any scientific framework that might explain what I was experiencing. I found theoretical work on wormholes, closed time-like curves, quantum entanglement. Most of it was way beyond my understanding, but one concept caught my attention: retrocausality, the idea that future events can affect the past. Some quantum physicists believe that on a subatomic level, time doesn't work the way we perceive it. That effects can precede causes. That information can flow backward through time under certain conditions. What if somehow, in moments of extreme stress or urgency, I was able to create a connection to my past self? What if the act of desperately wanting to prevent a tragedy opened up a channel through time? It was the closest thing to an explanation I had, even if I didn't understand the mechanism. 3 days ago, December 17th, I received another call. This time it was during a day shift. I was at work, processing routine calls, noise complaints, welfare checks, nothing urgent. Then a call came through marked as high priority. I accepted it. 911, what's your emergency? Sarah. My voice again, but different this time. Older, somehow. More worn down. I need you to listen very carefully. What I'm about to tell you is going to be hard to hear. My stomach dropped. What is it? In 2 weeks, on December 31st, at 11:52 p.m., there's going to be an incident at your apartment building. A gas leak in the building's main line. There's going to be an explosion. Multiple casualties. The room seemed to tilt. What? My building. You need to report it now. Get the gas company to inspect the building. There's a corroded valve in the basement that's been slowly leaking. If they check it now, they'll find it and fix it before it becomes critical. How do you know this? I asked, though I already knew the answer. How could you possibly? Because I survived it, Sarah. Barely. But 16 other people didn't. including Mrs. Kowalski from 3B and that young couple with the baby in 2A. I've been living with that guilt for, God, I don't even know how long anymore. Time is, it's not linear anymore. Not for me. What are you talking about? Where are you? I'm. A long pause. I'm in a place where I can see the threads. Where I can trace back along the timeline and find the pivot points. It's not easy. Each connection takes something from me. But I can't stop, Sarah. There are so many people we can save if I just keep. Static interrupted the call. When the voice came back, it sounded distant, breaking up. Report the gas leak. Today. And Sarah, when this is over, when you've saved everyone you can save, stop. Don't become like me. Don't get lost in the threads. Promise me. I don't understand. What threads? What's happening to you? But the line was dead again. I sat there, shaking. The future version of me, how far in the future was she? What had happened to her? She'd sounded so tired, so broken. And she'd talked about time not being linear anymore, about being lost in threads. But I didn't have time to process any of that. I had 2 weeks to prevent a gas explosion in my building. I called the gas company that afternoon, reporting a suspected gas leak. They sent someone out the next day. The technician was skeptical at first. I hadn't smelled gas, hadn't noticed any problems. But I insisted, and finally he agreed to do a full inspection. They found it. A corroded valve in the basement, exactly where the future call had said. It wasn't leaking noticeably yet, but the technician said it was badly degraded and could have failed catastrophically at any time. Good thing you called when you did, he said. Another few weeks and this could have been a real disaster. 16 people. 16 lives saved because I'd made a phone call. But all I could think about was that final warning, don't become like me. Don't get lost in the threads. What did it mean? Was there some cost to this ability? Some consequence I wasn't seeing yet? Last night, December 20th, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about everything that had happened. The calls. The saves. The growing list of people who were alive because of information from the future. David Chen and his family. Marcus and Jennifer Williams and their children. My neighbors in the apartment building. How many people in total? How many ripple effects? David Chen's students, who still had their teacher. The Williams children, who still had their parents. Mrs. Kowalski's grandchildren, who would still have their grandmother at Christmas. Hundreds of people affected, maybe thousands when you counted all the downstream effects. And it was all because some version of me, somewhere, someone, had figured out how to send information backward through time. I got out of bed at 3 a.m. and opened my laptop. I pulled up all the recordings of the calls, listened to them back to back. Listened to my own voice warning myself, pleading with myself, thanking myself. There was something in the voice that caught my attention this time. In that last call, the most recent one. My future self had said, I don't even know how long anymore. Not I don't know how long it's been. But I don't know how long. Like she'd lost track of time itself. Like she existed outside of normal temporal flow. And she'd said stop and don't get lost in the threads and don't become like me. A horrible thought occurred to me, what if making these calls trapped you somehow? What if by reaching back through time, you became unstuck from time? What if my future self was caught in some kind of temporal loop, unable to move forward, only able to look back and warn about disasters? What if by saving all these people, I was condemning myself to that fate? I didn't sleep at all last night. This morning, I'm sitting here writing this all out, trying to make sense of it, trying to decide what to do. Because here's my dilemma, even if making these calls does trap me in some kind of temporal anomaly, even if it means sacrificing my normal life, how can I not do it? How can I receive information about preventable deaths and just ignore it? David Chen is alive because I acted. The Williams family is alive. My neighbors are alive. How many more people could be saved if I keep going? If I figure out how to make the calls myself, instead of just waiting to receive them? But the warning from my future self echoes in my mind, stop. Don't become like me. Don't get lost in the threads. She's living some kind of nightmare existence, I'm sure of it now. Unstuck from time, able to see disasters before they happen, desperately trying to warn her past self, losing pieces of herself with each connection. Is that my future? Is that inevitable? Or can I find a way to save people without losing myself? I don't have answers. All I have are questions and a growing certainty that I'm caught up in something much bigger and stranger than I ever imagined. The Aurora Bridge is significant, somehow my future self said so. There's something about that location, that structure, that's connected to all of this. Tomorrow, I'm going back to the bridge. I'm going to walk across it, examine it, try to understand what makes it special. Why that location? Why me? And I'm going to start documenting everything more carefully. If I do end up becoming like my future self, lost in time, maybe I can leave better instructions. Maybe I can help myself understand what's happening and how to navigate it without losing myself completely. But tonight, as I write this, I'm terrified. Not of dying, I've made peace with mortality in this job. But of becoming something else. Something unstuck. Something that exists only to warn and save and loop back through time forever. I think about David Chen going home to his wife and daughters that night. About the Williams children sleeping safely in their beds. About Mrs. Kowalski baking cookies for her grandchildren this Christmas. They're all alive because I listened to myself from the future. How can that be wrong? How can saving lives be the thing that dooms me? But my future self's voice haunts me. The exhaustion in it. The way she talked about not knowing how long anymore, about being lost in threads, about time not being linear. She sounded like someone who'd been doing this for years. Maybe decades. Maybe longer. And she begged me to stop. I'm including this update because something happened this morning that I need to record while it's fresh. I went to the Aurora Bridge at dawn. I'm not sure what I was looking for, some kind of physical anomaly, maybe? A feeling of temporal distortion? I don't know. But I had to go. I parked in the same lot where I'd waited on November 19th and walked onto the bridge as the sun was rising. The morning was cold and clear, the city still mostly asleep. A few cars passed, but the pedestrian walkway was empty. I walked slowly, paying attention to everything. The way the bridge vibrated slightly as vehicles passed. The smell of salt water from the canal below. The sound of wind through the metal structure. When I reached the spot where David Chen had been standing, where the concrete barrier had been destroyed and since repaired, I stopped. I put my hand on the new section of barrier. It was cold under my palm. And then I felt it. It's hard to describe. Not a physical sensation exactly, but a kind of awareness. Like suddenly being conscious of a dimension I hadn't noticed before. Like when you're in a dark room and your eyes adjust and you realize there are shapes and depths you couldn't see before. Time felt different there. Not flowing in one direction but pooling, eddying, creating little whirlpools. I could almost sense the past and future existing simultaneously in that spot. I could feel the echo of the accident that had happened, and the ghost of accidents that hadn't happened yet, and the branches of possibility spreading out in all directions. It lasted maybe 10 seconds. Then it passed, leaving me dizzy and disoriented, gripping the barrier for balance. But in those 10 seconds, I understood something fundamental: the Aurora Bridge is a thin place. Not geographically, but temporally. Time is thinner there, more permeable. And I, somehow, am sensitive to it. Maybe it's something about this location, the height, the way it spans the canal, some geological or magnetic property. Or maybe it's something about my own brain, some quirk of neurology that makes me able to perceive temporal anomalies that other people can't sense. But whatever the mechanism, I now know why the calls come from me, why they're connected to this bridge, why I'm able to receive them. I'm temporally sensitive. I can feel the threads of time in ways other people can't. And if I'm not careful, I'm going to get tangled in them. It's now December 21st, 7:43 p.m. I'm back in my apartment, and I've spent all day researching and thinking. I've made a decision. I'm going to continue receiving the calls and acting on them. I can't not save people when I have the ability to do so. That's not who I am, and I won't become someone who ignores warnings about preventable deaths just to protect myself. But I'm also going to be smart about it. I'm going to establish boundaries. Rules to keep myself grounded in the present. Here's what I'm committing to. Rule 1, I will only act on calls I receive. I will not actively try to reach back through time myself. My future self warned me not to get lost in the threads, and I think that means not diving in deeper than I already am. Rule 2, I will document everything meticulously. Every call, every date, every outcome. If I do start to become unstuck from time, maybe the documentation will help anchor me. Or help someone else understand what happened. Rule 3, I will maintain my life in the present. My job, my friendships, my routines. I will not let this consume me completely. I'll set aside time to process and investigate, but I won't let it become my entire existence. Rule 4, I will check in regularly with people I trust: Sarah, Dr. Morrison, maybe Rita if she needs to know more. If I start showing signs of temporal disorientation or losing my grip on linear time, they'll notice and intervene. Rule 5, if it becomes too much, if I feel myself slipping into whatever happened to my future self, I will stop. I'll find a way to sever the connection, even if it means moving away from Seattle, away from the bridge, away from whatever is enabling this. These rules might not be enough. But there's something. They're an attempt to save others without losing myself. This morning, December 22nd, I received another call. I was at home, making breakfast, when my personal cell phone rang. Not my work phone, my personal cell. The number showed as my own number. I stared at it for 5 rings before answering. Hello. Hi, Sarah. My voice, but different again. Younger this time. Closer to how I sound now. I know you're scared. I know you're trying to figure out how to do this without becoming like the other version of me, the one who's lost in the threads. How many versions are there? I asked, my hand shaking. I don't know. Time isn't a line, Sarah. It's a web. Every choice creates branches. Every prevented death changes the pattern. There are versions of me that stopped after the first call. Versions that kept going for years. Versions that figured out how to do it safely. And at least one version that got completely lost. Which version are you? I'm the version that found a balance. I'm calling from about 3 years in your future. And I wanted to tell you that your rules are good. They'll help. But you need one more rule. What is it? Never try to prevent your own death. My blood went cold. What? You're going to receive a call eventually, maybe months from now, maybe years, warning you about something that's going to happen to you. An accident, an attack, something. And you're going to be tempted to change it, to save yourself the way you've saved others. Why wouldn't I? Because that's how you get stuck. That's how time traps you. You can change other people's timelines, but if you change your own too dramatically, you create a paradox. You become the thing creating the calls, and the calls become the thing keeping you alive, and you loop forever. That's what happened to the lost version. She saved herself, and in doing so, trapped herself outside of linear time. I sat down heavily on my couch. So I'm supposed to just die when my time comes. We all die, Sarah. The question is whether we die as ourselves, in our proper time, or whether we become something else, something caught between moments forever. Choose your death over that existence. Trust me. How do I know you're telling the truth? How do I know you're not trying to trick me? You don't. But think about it, what do I gain from lying? I'm you. I want what's best for us. And what's best is helping people without losing ourselves. Your 5 rules plus this one will keep you safe. There was a pause. Then she said, softly, it's a good life, Sarah. The next 3 years. You save 17 more people. You meet someone, his name is James, he's a paramedic, you'll like him. You don't get rich or famous, but you make a real difference. And you stay yourself. That's worth something. What happens after 3 years? I don't know yet. I'm still living it. But I wanted to reach back and tell you it's going to be okay. You figured it out. We figured it out. The call ended. This time, it felt less ominous. Less like a warning and more like reassurance. I added the 6th rule to my list. Rule 6, never try to prevent my own death. Accept mortality. Die as myself, in my proper time. It's been 3 days since that call. December 25th, now Christmas Day. I'm spending it alone, which is fine. Sarah is with her family in California, and I didn't feel like joining Dr. Morrison's invitation to her family dinner. I need time to process. I keep thinking about what my future self said. That it's a good life. That I save 17 more people. That I meet someone named James. 17 people over 3 years. That's not very many, really. One person every couple of months. Small scale. Manageable. Maybe this doesn't have to be an all-consuming thing. Maybe I can do this and still have a normal life. I've started to make peace with it, I think. With being someone who receives calls from herself. With having this strange ability or curse or gift, I still don't know what to call it. Because at the end of the day, despite the fear and the confusion and the existential terror of it all, there's one thing I'm certain about. David Chen is alive. He had Christmas with his daughters this year. He'll have more Christmases with them. Maybe he'll walk them down the aisle someday, meet his grandchildren, grow old with his wife. The Williams family is together. Their children are opening presents right now, completely unaware that in another timeline, they would have died in a fire. Mrs. Kowalski is baking her famous pierogies for her grandchildren today, in an apartment building that didn't explode. These aren't abstract concepts. These are real people living real lives because of information that came from somewhere else in time. Because some version of me cared enough to reach back and warn. How can I regret that? How can I wish it wasn't happening? I can't. I won't. So I'll keep answering the calls. I'll follow my 6 rules. I'll save who I can save. And I'll try very hard not to lose myself in the process. I need to wrap this up because it's getting long, and I'm not even sure why I'm writing it all down. Maybe for my own sanity. Maybe because some version of me in the future will need to read this and remember what it was like at the beginning, before it all became normal. Or maybe I'm writing it for you, whoever you are reading this. Maybe you're someone else who's experienced something like this: temporal anomalies, warnings from the future, information that shouldn't be possible to have. If so, I want you to know, you're not crazy. It's real. And you can learn to live with it. Or maybe you're just someone reading a weird story on the internet, thinking this can't be real. That's fine too. I wouldn't have believed it either, before it happened to me. But it is real. The calls are real. The saves are real. And somewhere out there in the fabric of time, there's a version of me who's completely lost, trapped in an eternal loop of warnings and calls, unable to move forward, unable to stop. I feel tremendous sadness for her, and tremendous gratitude that she's trying to keep me from becoming her. And there's another version of me, 3 years ahead, who figured out how to balance it all. Who has a good life and a person named James and the satisfaction of knowing she's made a difference. I'm aiming to become her. Final update, written just now, December 26, 3:14 a.m. I couldn't sleep, so I got up and checked my work email. There was a message from the Seattle Fire Department, sent yesterday. Subject: Fire Prevention Commendation. It was a formal letter thanking me for the call I'd made to the Williams family about their smoke detectors. Apparently Jennifer Williams had called the fire department to tell them about the community safety program that had potentially saved their lives, and when they investigated and found out there was no such program, they traced the call back to the burner phone's location near my apartment building. They'd figured out it was me. But instead of being angry about the deception, the letter was full of praise. While your methods were unconventional, your intervention likely prevented a tragedy. We would like to discuss incorporating similar proactive outreach into our actual community safety initiatives. They want to meet with me after the holidays to discuss it. I started crying when I read that letter. Not because of the commendation, but because it hit me that I don't have to do this alone. That there might be ways to prevent disasters without relying solely on impossible phone calls from the future. What if I could use my knowledge of common causes of accidents and fires to do legitimate safety outreach? What if the 911 Center could partner with fire and police departments to do proactive prevention? Not every life saved has to involve temporal paradoxes. Sometimes you can just check people's smoke detectors. It's such an obvious thought, but it hadn't occurred to me until now. Maybe because I was so focused on the impossible nature of the calls that I forgot about the possible nature of prevention. Maybe that's part of the answer too. Use the calls for the truly unpreventable things, the random accidents, the unexpected events. But for everything else, do normal, practical prevention work. Save people through both impossible and possible means. I think my future self would approve. So that's where I am now. December 26, 2024. 3 months after the first call. 4 lives saved, well, 4 initial saves, but if you count the apartment building, it's more like 20. 20 people alive who might not have been. I don't know what happens next. I don't know how many more calls I'll receive, or what they'll ask me to do, or whether I'll successfully avoid becoming the lost version of myself. But I know I'll keep trying. I'll follow my 6 rules. I'll save who I can save. I'll live my life in the present while being open to warnings from the future. It's a strange existence, but it's mine. And honestly, despite everything, the fear, the confusion, the temporal paradoxes, the existential dread, I think I'm lucky. Lucky to have this ability. Lucky to be able to make a difference. Lucky to know that somewhere in the future, some version of me is watching out for me, guiding me, trying to help me avoid her fate. Not everyone gets warnings from their future self. Not everyone gets to save lives. I do. And I'm going to try very hard to be worthy of that gift. If you're reading this and you're the future me, I hope you're okay. I hope you found a way to balance it all. I hope you're still yourself. And if you're the lost version, the one stuck in the threads, I'm so sorry. I'll try not to join you there. But thank you for the warnings. Thank you for caring enough about strangers to sacrifice yourself. You saved people even as you lost yourself. That means something. It matters. And if you're just a regular person reading this, wondering if it's true, it is. Every word. The calls are real. The saves are real. Time is thinner than you think. And sometimes, if you listen carefully enough, you can hear yourself calling from the future. If that ever happens to you, my advice is simple. Listen. Act. But don't get lost. Stay grounded in the present even as you reach toward the future. Help others, but protect yourself. And remember, we all die eventually. The question is whether we die as ourselves or as something else. Choose yourself. Always choose to stay yourself. That's my plan, anyway. I'll let you know how it goes. 3 years from now, if my future self was telling the truth, I'll look back on this time as the beginning. The beginning of a strange but good life. A life spent answering impossible phone calls and saving people who never know they were in danger. And meeting someone named James. And staying myself through all of it. That's my hope, anyway. That's my intention. We'll see what actually happens. Time will tell. Or in my case, time already has told. I just have to wait to catch up to what it said. This is Sarah Chen, 911 Dispatcher, signing off. If I receive more calls, I'll update again. Until then, stay safe, everyone. Check your smoke detectors. Don't text and drive. Pay attention to the people around you. Small choices prevent big tragedies. You don't need calls from the future to save lives. You just need to care and pay attention. But if you do receive a call from your future self, listen to it. It might be the most important call you ever take. Trust me. I know from experience.